This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. It's that time of the week where I take your questions from YouTube, Twitter, and everywhere else and answer them here on this show. I love doing these. And if you want to make sure that your questions get reached onto this show, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you can be informed when I do put the question prompt out on the YouTube community page. If you don't know where the community page is on my home page. If you click my icon, you'll find the home page and then you'll see some tabs. You'll see video, you'll see community. Community's right there. All right. First question comes from George Hines, who says, "Hey Q, love the content. Now that the team is pretty much set, we can finally start to focus on week one. How do you think we stack up against the Cincinnati Bengals this year? And what do you think are going to be the biggest keys to success against them?" It's not going to change from what it's always been with the Cincinnati Bengals since they've gotten Joe Burrow. The key to beating the Cincinnati Bengals is getting pressure on Joe Burrow. They've been able to do this because Myles Garrett has been left in a one-on-one mismatch with Jonah Williams for the last 3 years. Now they upgraded there. They put in Orlando Brown Jr., but the Browns have also upgraded on the defensive line. So the question is, can we still get that pressure? If we can get that pressure, our corners are going to be able to hold up long enough for this to be something that really hurts Cincinnati's offense. Offensively for the Browns, look, DJ Reader was a monster in the last game that the Browns played against the Cincinnati Bengals. They're gonna need to find ways to attack that Cincinnati secondary, because if you want to look for ways that Cincinnati is not as strong as last year, it's there in the secondary. The next question comes from Sam Oliviero, says, "With the final 53-man roster, are there any holes you see or any rooms that you're shaky on? Thank you." No, I'm shocked, but no. I look at linebacker, I'm fine with that room. I look at safety, I'm fine with that room. I look at defensive line, I'm fine with that room. I look at offensive line, I'm fine with that room. Wide receiver, maybe there's something to talk about, right? The Browns have some good wide receivers and some good receiving options. I don't know if they have a go-to yet, but still, I'm fine with that room. And then quarterback, I'm fine with that room. Running back, I'm fine with that room. This is a good roster, up and down, 53 roster, everybody on it. There's really no excuse to not be good this year. Noah Green says, "Hey Q, I've been watching since 2019. Shout out to you, OG, and love your takes. I was wondering, who do you think is the biggest threat in the AFC to the Browns would be, or even teams to look out for in the AFC North?" If you're asking me what teams do I think the Browns are a threat to if they put it together, I think you could say almost every team in the NFL. I think the Browns are the one sleeping giant in this conference. But if we're talking about an individual matchup, I have to go back to Cincinnati because that's the team that struggled against us, and it seems like we're the only team that they routinely struggle against. If I'm looking at it from a Browns perspective, what team it provides the biggest threat, and it's going to be teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Chargers, teams that can score very explosively, that have decent enough offensive lines, or quarterbacks who have been able to get off on us for whatever reason, right? Justin Herbert's been able to get off on us. Pat Mahomes been able to get off on us. That's really what it's going to come down to, right? I'm worried about those high scoring offenses because while I'm confident that Deshaun Watson is back to, the old Deshaun Watson, I do wonder, hey, how long is it going to take us to get that quick strike going, right? Logan says, "Q, feeling pretty good with the roster. Feel everyone worth keeping was brought back. I know it can change at any time during the season with injuries or poor performance, but I gotta say this season was probably AB's best draft. What are your thoughts so far?" I'll say this. It's real easy to say that the most recent draft is somebody's best draft because you're still up on all of those players, right? But you have to evaluate the draft years back. And for whatever reason, since the Browns haven't had very many first round picks, I think that broke our collective brains when it comes to talking about draft picks, because people talk about AB as if his draft picks aren't good. But if you look at it with the context that he's not picking with the same quality of picks that other GMs are picking from, he's actually done pretty good. That 2020 draft, he got Jedrick Wills, who wasn't the best left tackle in that draft, but he was better than some of the other options, right? Mekhi Becton has been on and off the field his whole career. They could have went that way. So you could have done worse than Jed Wills with some of those obvious choices in that draft class. You got Grant Delpit, who I think is going to turn into who's been turning himself into a fine player, led safeties and run stops in the last half of the season. And then you also got Donovan Peoples-Jones in the 6th round. That's a successful draft. You get 3 players that you have to think about extending in a draft. That's a successful draft. Like, I don't care who else was in that mix. Who cares? You get 3 players. That's a successful draft, right? 2021, you got Greg Newsome, JOK out of that deal. And I think that's a fine draft. You come out with 2 players that you really like out of a draft, especially when your first round pick was in the late 20s. And a lot of teams do a lot worse. You even look at last year, Martin Emerson. You got Martin Emerson out of that deal. And it looks like it's probably just going to be Martin Emerson, maybe Alex Wright, maybe David Bell, but that's a draft that you didn't pick until the 3rd round, and you're still getting something out of it. And then we're talking about 2023, all these players that we like. We feel like DTR could be something for this team. We feel like Cam Mitchell can be something for this team right now. DeJuan Jones, Siaki Ika, and Cedric Tillman. And of those 5 players, odds are 3 of those guys hit. If you get 3 good players that you extend from a draft class that you started at 74, pick 74, that's an overwhelming success. Anybody who tries to act like AB has not done a good job in the draft, they're choosing to ignore the context because they want to make a point that's not accurate. Because he's been at the very least decent at the draft. And when he's been as good at everything else as he's been, like, that's fine. And he's been better than decent, in my opinion. The next question comes from, I think I skipped one. Yeah, this next question comes from Iceman the Boss. Shout out 2006 Gucci, who says, with some of the moves made this offseason, I've noticed some people saying that AB's only good with free agents and that his drafts are poor. JOK and G New for examples. What are your thoughts on AB's draft prowess and how should he evaluate these drafts? Again, you got to evaluate them with context. John Dorsey got two top 5 picks in one draft. Andrew Berry's never had a top 5 pick. Andrew Berry's earliest pick was 10th, and with that pick, he got a starter. So I think that sometimes people are just trying to find things to be critical of Andrew Berry on. And if you look at his draft history without any of the context, you can slither your way into being like that. But honestly, I think draft talk is broken now. I hear people talking about 4th round picks, 5th round picks, 6th round picks. Sometimes some of y'all even be saying 7th round picks and y'all be calling them bust. Nobody drafted on day 3 of the NFL draft is a bust. I'm sorry. I don't care. They never play a single down for the team that drafted them. A 4th round pick can never be a bust. A 3rd round pick can never be a bust. Hell, a pick outside the top 10 cannot be a bust. I don't think we understand what bust is anymore, right? And that's what drives me crazy with the conversation when I hear people say, oh, well, he drafted K York and that was a bust. K York's not a bust. He's just a pick that didn't work out. And the reason anybody outside the top 10 really can't be a bust is because the expectations and the risk is just not high enough for anybody not in the top 10 of the draft for you to consider them a bust. A bust means that the expectations were sky high. A bust means that the risk to get this player was sky high. And if you're not picking within the top 10 of the draft, then nobody's eligible to be in a bust. A 4th-round pick is not expensive enough or risky enough for it to be a bust. So people who say stuff like that are usually the ones who are critical of Andrew Berry. And I think it's just because we've some point down the line, we started treating every pick as if it's the first top 5 pick in the draft or something like that, when that's just not how this goes. We really lost our way with this draft conversation, to be honest with you. Praise the Sun says, what kind of running back style does Pierre Strong bring to the table? Is he a power back, shifty back, more of a he's kind of like Kareem Hunt, one cut, go downhill kind of guy, real fast. He ran like a 4.3 or something like that in college. So that's the kind of running back he is. We'll find out, or we won't. He might not play that much. He's third running back, but that's what he brings to the table. You go watch his highlights of South Dakota State. Ghost Rider says, who do you think will be the Browns' leading receiver this year, and why? Do you think Njoku will finally be unleashed as the goal line jump ball threat? I think Coop's going to be the leading receiver because Coop's going to be the main option. I think Njoku, hopefully, if everything goes right, he will and be, up there with touchdowns. Or I want him to be top 5 of all tight ends in touchdowns this year. If he does that, then we're doing well. Sammy Football says, hey, Q, what do you think about Obo getting 9+ sacks this season? It looks like he's ready for a nice jump on the cap. In preseason, he's seen in the backfield almost every play. For a dude like Obo, I don't need him to get 9+ sacks. I need the pressure numbers to be good. And if he gets 5 or 6 sacks, that's fine. 9 is a lot, especially when Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith are going to be there to gobble up any pressures that you get. So I don't know if 9 is a good number for him, but I do want him to get a significant amount of pressures. And if he ends up with 5 or 6 sacks, I think that's a great number for him. But thank you for that question, Sammy. Next question is from AL, who says, as a Browns fan, I, of course, know and look of fool's gold. And I'm just wondering if you might agree that the Steelers are getting the same fool's gold treatment from the media that the Browns got recently before having down years. I just wouldn't be surprised as the Steelers think this year. There are a few teams that there's a lot of excitement about that I don't really understand the excitement once I take a closer look. The Steelers are one of them because, yes, they'll look fine in the preseason, but the real question is, how long is it going to take them to score in the regular season? And I don't think that that's going to be any faster than it was last year, or at least not significantly faster. So if they're limited in that way, they're just not going to be a team that's going to win a ton of games because they have a very limited not a style of play, but a limited path to victory in whatever games that they play. The Ravens are another one where I'm like, hey, there's a lot of things that are a little concerning, right? The lack of an edge rush, the downgrade at the corner position for the Ravens, the change of offense to Todd Monken, bringing in, Odell Beckham and seeing what that's going to be, and then Nelson Aguilar, seeing what that's going to be, and then pairing them with Rashad Bateman. And then we know that the Ravens have injury problems over the years. So those are 2 teams where I'm like, I would be more, not pessimistic on those teams, but more cautious about those 2 teams. Daniel Miller says, hey, Q, we've seen Stefanski be too cute or overthink a play call over the years. With our personnel currently looking at DW4 and Elijah Moore, do you think we can find some success here finally? Or do we prefer a more standard approach to let DW cook? It's going to depend on what the execution is looking like early in the season. If they're able to get those 3rd and shorts with regular execution, if they're able to get into the end zone with regular execution, I don't think you're going to see a lot of trick plays or a lot of plays with heavy deception because it won't be necessary. The trick plays, and I think people, when they complain about Stefanski being too cute, they have to factor in that the only reason the trick plays happen is because the execution was not where they wanted it to be when they played it standard, right? People complain all the time about, why do we do this and not just run Chubb at the 1-yard line? We do run Chubb at the 1-yard line. It doesn't work a lot of times. He's not the greatest short yardage back in football. He just isn't. He's not where his strengths are. Think about the number of goal line stands that have happened against the Cleveland Browns since Nick Chubb's been here. And it's odd for somebody that good at running back to be that bad at that area of the field, but that just is what it's been, right? So that's why Stefanski has to get too cute, right? Baker Mayfield wasn't a short yardage king either. That's why he's had to get too cute. When he had Jacoby Brissett and Jacoby Brissett was eating at those first downs, getting the quarterback sneak, he just called quarterback sneak all the time. But then it became obvious that the Browns were doing that. Teams started keying in on it, stopping it, and the Browns had no other option, so they had to get cute. If they execute well in these short yardage situations, if they execute well in red zone situations, they won't have to get cute. The cuteness only comes when they don't execute. So it's not, we're being mad at a symptom instead of the problem that's causing the symptom, is basically what I'm saying, Daniel. Ace says, and shout out to Ace, a member. It's a big if, but if the Browns start 4-0, how does that change the AFC and NFL landscape? 500 in the division plus a conference win. It would be huge for the Browns. Look, the Browns thing that hurt them the most last year once they lost all them games early was that it killed them with tiebreakers. You win your first 3 division games, it's a huge lift off your shoulders, right? You don't have to worry about being under 500 in the division. You have a decent division record, and then you have time to play those teams again. And also, look, the conference wins are going to be important. If you start off 4-0, that's going to be a really good sign for the Cleveland Browns. Now, will they do it? I have no clue. We'll see. That's why they play the games. Gagan says here, are people underestimating how important the effect of Burrow's lack of practice and preseason snaps are in a week 1? Burrow had 4 of his 12 interceptions in 22 coming off of that appendectomy, and his calf issues will probably linger. Yeah, the Bengals have had some questionable week 1 performances. That wasn't the first time that they've had a questionable one. So I think people are underestimating it a little bit, but I wouldn't overestimate it. I think Joe Burrow's going to look like Joe Burrow for the most part. Maybe a little bit of rust here and there, but I wouldn't go in there betting on Joe Burrow looking terrible. But that's it for this week's Q&A. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night.